All right, well, we're stuck on number 1 over here. I'm Sonja.
I'm Lisa.
And we're here for the abbreviated
Friday
night wrap on a Wednesday afternoon. Tuesday
That's
afternoon?
Right. Yeah, it's
what day of the week
Tuesday.
is it? It's a holiday week. That's a problem.
Right. And Friday's a holiday.
Yes, indeed.
So, I think today I have an interesting topic at first.
Okay.
Because I had an interesting week with a new client, a payroll client.
All right.
And they have a situation where, you know where I'm going with this.
I know where you're going with this.
Where they have someone that wants to waiter and also cook. And so they need to make sure that they don't have overtime with the 2 positions.
Well,
but if they do, in Massachusetts, what happens with that?
Well, anytime you are employing a waitstaff employee, you have to ensure that for each hour they're working, you are paying from the state minimum wage up until, well, the state minimum server wage up until the actual state minimum wage, if in fact they're not making that money in tips every hour. In other words, in Massachusetts, you pay somebody $2.63 an hour, provided you can prove that through tips they're actually making $8 an hour.
Right, and they have to declare their tips to make that $8 an hour.
Correct, which is why it's really important if you own a restaurant or you're running a restaurant to make certain that you're actually doing that correctly. Mm-hmm. Where you have overtime, where you've got somebody that's working 2 positions, one of them being a waitstaff position, what you have to do is effectively this really weird calculation. You figure out how much money the individual should be making for the entire week, okay? On a regular hourly basis. And you have to figure it out using regular minimum wage, which is $8 an hour for a server, and then whatever the hourly wage is for being a chef in this instance. So you do the math out. 20 hours as a server, that's $160. And then you do the other math. Say it's $10 an hour, and say it's 25 hours as a chef. So then you end up with, I think it's $450 or $500. You add those 2 numbers together, and then you divide it by the number of hours that the person actually worked. And that gives you the amount you have to pay that person in addition to their hourly rate for every hour they work over 40. I looked at Intuit, which is one of the very popular
software. They make QuickBooks and
right.
Quicken.
And they use it for payroll many times. Mm-hmm. And I think I looked at ADP too. But, you know, neither of those softwares actually had something to allow that calculation to be done.
Right, so I'm going to be doing it manually.
Right, and my response to you, and I'm hoping your response to the client was, A, we don't want you to do that. B, if you're going to do it, you don't let them work over 40 hours between the 2 positions, because it's just too much. It's too much of a problem. Mm-hmm. It's kind of fraught.
And tips are a big area where they're starting to crack down a lot. Like, technically, what you're supposed to do with waiters and waitresses is they're supposed to keep a log. And you can go to irs.gov and put in wages and tips, and they have logs that you can print out and use. And you're supposed to give it to your employer either every pay period or at least once a month, whichever is comes up first. And then your employer reports that. And you're not supposed to report only 8% of your gross sales. That's a myth. That's a unit of measure, a benchmark that's used for approximation. But as a server, you are supposed to report 100% of your tips. And those tips reported need to also equate $8 an hour. So if you work 20 hours and you said you only made $70 worth of tip, that's a red flag for the IRS, because there's a report your employer has to send in if you have 10 or more wait staff, and they immediately look for that. So they're looking to, number 1, that your tips versus your hours comes out to $8 an hour. Number 2, you need to report all of your tips. And number 3, they look at an approximation of that should be 8% of your total sales.
And as a wage and hour lawyer, I've got to tell you that as an employer, if you're not maintaining your own records, those records that that employee is maintaining are going to be the records that carry the day if we have to file litigation or litigation's filed against you. The problem with that is, guess what? The employee rather, is saying that for an 8-hour shift, they're making, you know, $50 in tips, and if you do the math on that pretty quick, you can end up less than minimum wage. I think I gave a bad number, but there is a number where you could get less than $8 an hour for a shift, and if that's the case, they walk into my office, I look at their logs, I'm going to file a complaint against you. And I'll tell you, frankly, I'm going to file a complaint against you because ultimately under the Massachusetts Wage Act or under the Rhode Island Wage Act, you are going to pay me, or you're going to pay the employee 3 times what the hourly rate should have been at minimum wage. So you're going to end up paying that employee, $24 an hour under the Mass Wage Act. And under federal law, it's going to be, $16 an hour minimum. Under Rhode Island law, it's up to $24 an hour. And in each of those, you're going to pay me my hourly rate, which I've got to tell you is not small, and you're going to pay me for whatever cost and fees I incur in filing that action. Right. And when I say you, I mean the employer is going to pay me, because ultimately Massachusetts has been very clear that that's what's going to happen, and the federal courts have been approving reasonable attorney's fees and cost petitions on a normal basis. So, you got to get the stuff right. It's not like you can say, oh, well, I made a mistake. Massachusetts and the federal government are both strict liability. You're in trouble.
And that's hard because, you're depending on your wait staff to tell the truth and put how many hours they have. I mean, in some places, maybe it does go less if it's quiet, if it's a smaller diners. But a lot of restaurants in the evenings and in tourist areas, I mean, you don't have to do the math to figure out if people are paying $50 a plate that the wait staff's making a minimum of $8 an hour.
I don't agree with that. I think you need to make certain that you are having your wait staff report tips. In Massachusetts, there's a form that you use, and in Rhode Island, there's a form that you use to record that.
No, that's what I'm saying. What do you not agree with?
I don't agree with the fact that they're making, $8 an hour with a tip credit. I'm telling you as an employer that you need to have those records.
Right, that's what I'm saying. But I'm saying
you can't just make an assumption. You need that server to report their tips every shift, and you need to have a log of that.
That's what I'm saying. But, the employer relies on the waiter or waitress to be filling in the hours.
And I'm telling you that your records better show that they're making $8 an hour or greater between the tip credit and the $2.63 an hour.
Right.
Don't rely on...
No, I know. That's what I'm saying. I think we're kind of talking the same thing here, but it's Wednesday instead of Friday. Basically, what I'm saying is, you can scratch your head. Is what I'm saying, and maybe I'm not clear enough because I'm tired. Because my sister's in town, and we all know what it's like when family shows up. And she showed up 6 hours earlier than when she was supposed to be here, so that was like even worse. No, I love my sister, maybe, but the problem is a lot of employers, get put in that middle position. And I was reading about this actually on the IRS site, which they were saying, make sure you're not in this position, of just taking the word of, okay, here's the sheets. Or in fact, a lot of employers, I don't even think do the sheets, which is really, really bad.
Well, that's what I was referring to.
And what they need to do is really look over their staff sheets and say, hey, listen here, I know you made more tips than that.
Well, here's the larger problem, right? If you can't prove what they're making for tips, you can't take the $2.63 an hour credit. Forget it. You can't do it. You are required at that point to pay them $8 an hour. And that's insane. If you're in a restaurant where, like the example you gave, they're $100 per table coming in, and you've got somebody that's turning on average 4 or 5 tables an hour, they're making really good money. But if your records don't show that they're actually making those tips, guess what? I'm going to come after you. I'm going to make you pay them $8 an hour times 3 for each hour that they worked. You need to make your records.
And part of it works good with point of sales because you have the credit card tips, so you can prove that piece with that. It's the cash portion, which I think these days probably more tips come in credit cards than in cash. Well, but it's still not a perfect science. It's nothing to rely on. You still need the paper records.
Sure, and also know that you can't require that the employee pay a percent. When you're going as a restaurant owner or any tip services, frankly, and you're paying that credit card to give you money. I mean, basically, I think you're paying about 2% per sale.
Yeah, 2.7 to 3.2.
You can't charge that on that tip. You have to pay that employee the full amount of that tip.
Yep.
And I suppose along the same lines is also this sort of tip pooling arrangements. If you are going to do a tip pool, A, I don't recommend it, but B, if you're going to do it, you can only give that tip pool to people who would actually make tips. You can't tip out the manager. You can't tip out the guy who's parking cars outside who doesn't get tips. It has to be a position where it's a regularly tipped position. And that means, I forget what the standard is, but there's a certain amount you can make a week before you have to declare tips as an employer on a W-2. It's not clicking in my head, but it's a very low amount. It's less than
$20 is for tips. It's 20. You can go $20 without reporting tips.
Right, but once you report that, that's a tipped employee. That person could participate in that pool, provided they were working that shift. Be very careful. If you're going to set up a tip pool, give me a call. Please don't just do it. That's not to say that you can't have an arrangement wherein the server, tips out the bus person or tips out the bartender 10%. I mean, something like that can be done. But, tip pooling is where you're putting all of the tips together and then breaking it down based on, shares for what person is there.
Right. Well, another issue, too, is the bus boy. A lot of places, bus boys get paid less than minimum wage because they get a percentage of tips.
And they can.
And once again, they got to be reported just like a waiter or a waitress,
right,
to make sure that they're making that $8 an hour minimum. And then what happens is the waitress, say she makes $300 in tips and gives, $100 to the bus boy. That's a lot, but say she does anyway.
It's generally $30.
Well, right, it's $30. So she reports $270 and he reports the $30.
Correct.
And that doesn't happen a lot either.
Well, and you also have to make certain, and I'm going to say for bus people this is true, I'm not even certain that you can pay them the server minimum wage. I'd have to look at that.
I looked up a couple of things, and basically the general consensus is if they're making minimum wage, but Massachusetts says $8 minimum wage. So.
Well, Massachusetts does some really strange things when it comes to wait staff.
Personally, I would just pay the bus boy minimum wage, and then if they take, like a lot of the consensus, I did searches and did the user groups besides the Mass site, and they'll take minimum wage plus 3% instead of like $5 or $6 plus 10%.
That could be. I just know that it's a sticky question
in
my mind.
I couldn't find a definitive, you have to pay a bus boy.
Oh, I can find a definitive.
Oh, that would be interesting.
I'll have to take a look, but I have to be honest in that I think when you're not talking about a server, you may very well be talking about an obligation to pay that bus person minimum wage.
Yeah.
Without a tip credit. I got to look it up.
That would be good to know.
The Department of Labor and Training will tell me. I promise. I promise it's in one of their fact sheets, which is interesting too. Have you ever gone and taken a look at the website for the Department of Labor?
Yeah, I use Occupational Outlook handbook all the time for things.
They've got a number of different primers in there that tell you, and tell me sometimes as a practitioner, to be honest, what the law is, how they're interpreting it, federal interpretations of the regulations and of the law. It's not necessarily binding on a court 100% of the time, but 99% of the time it is. So those are interpretive guidelines that are really, really helpful. It's the sort of thing that I rely on when I give somebody advice on how to deal with these particular issues. Frankly, if I need to do further research, it's a good start, because I can say, it goes back to this CFR or whatever it is, and then start from there taking a look. Real interesting read if you want to go take a look. There's also the same sorts of things for FMLA, the Family Medical Leave Act, for Title VII, our discrimination acts, all of those other things. And, I gotta say Massachusetts is really, really good with putting that stuff online. At least basic information as far as, this is how you contact agencies, this is what we do, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and it's easy to Google, too. In Massachusetts, it comes up.
But, we had a laugh about one of the major employer firms, Jackson Lewis. Not that I said that.
Okay. I don't know who they are.
One of the attorneys at Jackson Lewis did a memorandum for one of the clients and charged like $2,500 for this memorandum, and walked into a lawyer's office, was not me, and said, what would you charge for this? And the lawyer went online and said, boom. Went right to Jackson Lewis, their website, and pulled down almost word for word the same opinion for free. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying to you that going to the internet is any sort of substitution for what I do or for what you do. But I am saying that, you know, when you go in to talk to me or you come in and talk to Lisa, if you have some sort of idea, it's helpful, and it's going to charge you less money. I mean, frankly, I mean, my job is to make as much money as I can, but at the same time, I try to be fair.
She's very honest.
I mean, frankly, if you don't need me, I'm going to tell you don't need me.
Yeah,
I've
she
done
does
that
not
many
swim
times.
with the sharks, you know.
You should swim with the sharks. I even have a tattoo of sharks back here.
With the sharks.
But no, you know, honestly, there's no reason for you to be paying top dollar for services that are already out there. You don't need to reinvent the wheel, as it were.
Right. But
go ahead.
Google is just something, you know, just to get to the sites better. I find the search engine on Google, for example, is better than the search engine on the IRS website itself.
Oh yeah.
Like, it's easier to find IRS docs by using Google than being on the IRS site.
I do that.
They have a better
Yep.
categorization, and however they do it, and it comes up quick, and it's right what you want. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Honestly.
So I don't know. All I can tell you is talk to your accountants, talk to your lawyers. Hopefully it's us.
Right. Because we do take time to look it up. Like, I have some clients that are restaurants, and I'm sending them some information. So I want to make sure, and, you know, we're just doing their payroll and stuff, and one of them has a bookkeeper, and we're going to oversee just their monthly statements and stuff. But I'm just not going to say, well, that's not my problem, you know, and, you know, you pay what you pay. I send them stuff.
Right.
I make them aware of it. It's ultimately their choice if they're going to do it or not. But then they can't say they didn't know.
I look at my job depending upon which side of the ball I am on. If I'm working for the employer, my job is to save you money. If I'm working for the employee, my job is to make you money. And that's how I look at things. And frankly, I can tell you that with how the law is evolving, how it's evolved recently in Rhode Island, if you come to me and you talk to me, I'm going to give you straight advice, because I believe that you're going to come and actually pay me to help you set up your systems.
Right, exactly.
I believe if you have a problem coming up, you're going to come back to me.
Right.
I'm not going to nickel and dime you for every sort of little thing. At the same time, I may tell you I'm going to bill you and never send you a bill. But, you know...
Which is one of our first rules of business.
Send bills.
Don't forget to send the bill.
But, you know, the bottom line is that you really should be, if you don't know what you're doing, it really is very, very hazardous to start doing things. Very negative for the 4th of July, don't you think?
No, I know. We should go to something positive.
Oh, good
But
Lord.
that was a good one with wage and stuff, because, you know, I see things out there, and then I read when I go to the government sites, you know, reading up on it. Because I do that. If I get clients and they're doing different things, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So I want to know more about it, you know. Just because I do accounting work doesn't mean I have all the answers. Although people think you are, you know, like, you know, he asked me how much a busboy should make. I don't know how much a busboy should make, you know.
Well, no,
but I do know that it should at least be minimum wage, you know. And I went to the Mass site, and then another one for restaurants is the MRA, the Massachusetts Restaurant Association.
Well, and know that, at least as far as restaurant owners are concerned, as far as overtime laws apply, they don't apply. They only apply from a federal standpoint. So you're looking at federal overtime. Not state. So what does that mean? It means that, you know, you've got the same obligations. That's all it means. It just means that Massachusetts itself doesn't say that, hey, you have to pay overtime to restaurant workers. I can't think of any employer that the Fair Labor Standards Act doesn't apply to. But, you know, you could end up in that situation where it doesn't apply to you because you're not doing gross volume of business over $500,000, or you're not doing anything that could ever possibly go across state lines.
Or like with the waitress thing, it's 10 waiters. Now it says, you know, is that 10 on staff during the night, or is that a total of 10? It just says 10 waiters.
It's a total of 10.
So that would be a total of 10 waiters. So anything under that, you're not on the hook. But it's still best practices, because you never know if you're going to grow, or they change the law.
Or you get somebody like me that sues you because you're not paying the correct hourly rate.
Correct. And it doesn't matter if you have 10 or less waiters or waitresses then.
I'll go after you. I have no problem. And as a matter of fact, I'd prefer a smaller class. I get paid the same hourly rate. I don't care.
She's so honest. I get
Sorry.
paid these rates, aren't I? So anyways, when I get clients and it's an industry and stuff that, you know, sure we do the accounting work for, but I take a little more interest and look things up. And I think the whole issue of the tip and the wage is interesting, and it's an up-and-coming issue. Because when I cross-reference it, everything I cross-reference, Wall Street Journal, I always cross-reference any articles from there. And actually the IRS sites and the National Restaurant Association as well. You know, they're all saying that this is an area that they're really getting hot on because they want their Social Security and Medicare money.
Oh, you mean the feds? I meant I meant wage lawyers.
Well, I mean,
I'm
both.
all over. I'm all over that.
Yeah. Well, then see, it's everything. Well, I would go by like the feds in the states because I'm not a lawyer.
Oh no, absolutely. And I'm looking at how do I pay my bills.
So either way, you're screwed if you don't. So that's the bottom line. You are screwed if you're not keeping records and making sure your wait staff records make sense.
And it's the staff that has left your employment who's going to walk into my office
And be disgruntled about something and have something over you.
and then they'll start talking to me about the busboy that made an inappropriate conduct to them, something stupid, and I'll say, no, you got no liability that way, but talk to me about how they paid you.
Right.
So beware.
So with that, yes, we're going to end on.
Sure.
Let's say something positive. So we're,
enjoy your fireworks.
yes.
I'm going to go play in the kiddie pool. I don't know about you.
She's going to go play in a kiddie pool. I'm going to the beach, and in Rhode Island, fireworks are legal, so we're going to. I'm not saying this because.
Well, not all of them are legal.
I don't care.
Oh, well, be careful. Don't blow your hand off.
But we're going to go down the beach, cook out, and
Send off some fireworks.
Maybe
Don't light anything on fire. That's the largest problem.
Yeah.
It's
like
been
one
dry.
day.
I mean, hopefully, I hate to say we get a little rain, but it would be good if we get a little rain
We
on
might get
Thursday
rain.
before the holiday. It would be good.
And send animal pictures, right? Post pictures of cats.
Post pictures of cats, no more political stuff, all right? I don't want to talk about Hobby Lobby anymore.
Yeah, we're talking about on Facebook. So, all right, we had like 25 views. We're really excited. A client looked at this and hired us because probably not the whole video, but just the whole website and the fact that we have a show. So, we're still getting going. So we're looking for a response, but at least people are watching it.
Yeah, send us questions, send us comments. If you think I'm a pompous ass, let me know. I think I am sometimes. And, we'll do what we can to try to give you interesting topics as we go forth from here, and things that we think are interesting, because honestly, we're the ones talking for 20 minutes.
Yeah, really.
All right, well, enjoy your holiday, and we'll be back again with you the Friday following the 4th.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. All right, bye.